Welcome back to the briefing on Shift by MSNBC. One issue that will get a lot of attention in not only the 2016 race, but also over the next year, especially as President Obama closes out the final 2 years of his presidency, is that of climate change. We've seen a few executive actions the president has moved forward, but oftentimes when you ask Republicans about the issue, they'll be quick to say, I'm not a scientist, mainly because any support for the belief in climate change, a lot of times in GOP circles, is viewed as very bad politics. However, a new New York Times poll shows that Republicans, a majority, are more likely to support somebody who, in fact, believes in climate change and wants to do something about it. That's sent somewhat of a shockwave through political circles because it goes against the conventional wisdom that Republicans don't believe in climate change. Joining me now to talk about this is the New York Times' Coral Davenport, who I've often said has the best name in all of journalism. Coral, thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure, it's great to be with you, Luke.
So, fascinating developments here. I don't think anybody would have believed this had you suggested it just sort of from the beginning that more Republicans are inclined to vote for a candidate that believes in climate change. We've seen in the past that a lot of Republicans believe that it's occurring, but that it has not necessarily translated to real political support of a candidate. Fascinating.
Yeah, the results of this poll were really interesting, Luke. The fact that, yes, Republicans are basically split in half on this issue. Half of Republicans say they are more likely to support a candidate who says human-caused climate change is real, it's a problem, and we're going to do something. Half of Republicans say they're less inclined to do that. But that 50-50 split is very different from kind of the conventional wisdom on this. We also see in the same polls numbers of the broad majority of Americans, about 78 to 79% of the electorate are more likely to support a candidate. Really important for Republicans in particular in the 2016 elections is that a majority of independent voters, those voters that they've got to get to sway in the general election, say they are more likely to support a candidate who will do something about climate change, less likely to support a candidate who says that it's a hoax. So a lot of really interesting implications for strategists trying to figure out how the candidates are going to talk about this issue over the next year.
Yeah, that number that you just mentioned, 66% of independents believe that something should be done. And then you also have within these polls that 78% of Americans feel this is somewhat of a serious issue or a very serious issue, but they believe it to be serious. So if you look at how the political debate's going to be framed moving forward, it would suggest that the current sort of status quo answer, which we hear from a lot of Republicans, which we recently heard from Speaker Boehner at the House Republican Retreat, which is, I'm not a scientist. You sort of mentioned that in your article. That might be retooled in the future because even people who are asking in these polls, they're not scientists, but they seem to be concerned about what's happening.
Yeah, I think that we saw that answer emerge during the 2014 midterm elections as kind of as a dodge, as a way to not directly answer the question. I don't think that that was something that had been worked out by strategists and poll tested. It just sort of emerged. And it is now emerging. You know, we specifically put in a question on that. You know, how do you respond to candidates who say it's a problem, I want to do something about it, or it's not a problem, it's a hoax, or C, I'm not a scientist, the evasive answer. And we saw that the majority of voters were repelled by that answer, although interestingly, we did see that among voters who identify as Tea Party voters, they're more inclined to support the I'm not a scientist answer than the you know, we need to do something about it. So that's going to be, you know, as is so often the case, especially for Republicans, they're trying to figure out a way, how do you talk about this really important issue in a way that gets you the base voters in primaries, but doesn't alienate the majority of voters and the independent voters that you need to win a general election. I think this is going to be a really difficult issue for Republicans, especially because I don't think they're going to be able to avoid the question.
Yeah, in the past they have been able to avoid the question, but if you even look at one of the ramifications of the new GOP-controlled Senate with a more open amendment process, you saw a Democratic amendment put on the most recent Keystone bill that essentially said, is climate change a hoax? And Republicans were able to, a lot of them did support it, saying, no, it's not a hoax. You know, we believe it to be legitimate. But then as to the cause and the reasons, well, that wasn't particularly defined. And I think if you look moving forward, more likely than not, you're going to have real intense question sessions where this idea of do you believe this is man-made will be pushed to the forefront.